A lot of smiles, couple thumbs up, some nods. Third week of the semester is going well. Lots of new challenges. Mike's going to help us with all those challenges. He's going to come up with lots of solutions for the challenges we're facing.
I'll try.
I believe in you.
All right, you want me to get started?
We're a couple minutes away, actually. And I've always found at Zoom meetings, at least me getting in always takes a little longer than I thought. So we'll probably get started about 12:02. So about 3 minutes from now, if that works for everybody.
Okay. Can I just ask, is my audio okay? I'm doing a lot of funky things over here. And
It sounds good to me.
okay.
We're not catching any funk, but we want the funk. Bring the funk.
I'll bring it. So when we get started, I just want to say you might want to put me on speaker view. Up at the top right-hand corner, you'll see a little button called speaker view. You might want to put that on because the style I'm going to show you does not require me to share my screen. Instead, I'm going to be kind of sharing my screen right in front of me, so to speak. So everything will be right here, and there'll be a few things you'll want to see. So go ahead and use that speaker view if you need it. And just, you know, every time I do something online, I'm usually doing about 20% of things I've never done before. So there's a high chance of failure up ahead.
All right, Mike, are you ready to get started after I introduce this?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Don Saucier. I'm the Associate Director of our Teaching and Learning Center. This is part of our professional development series. This series meets Wednesdays at noon every week. And for anyone who can't be here, we record these. We put these up on our Canvas page for our professional development series. And those recordings are available to watch at your convenience. If any of you would like an invitation to that Canvas page and aren't already on that page, let us know and we'll be happy to invite you. We are very lucky today to have Mike Wesch, who is a teaching superhero at K-State. And I am very excited to, during our new transition to remote and online learning that many of us are going into places we haven't been before, Mike's going to help us out with PowerPoint. And what I'm really excited about is that PowerPoint is something we all, well, many of us use and are familiar with, and I'm really looking forward to understanding his capabilities. So with no further ado, thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this, but like I said, there could be failures ahead. And there may be some funky things here, but just to start off, this is actually PowerPoint as I'm starting off with here. I have it set so that there is essentially, it's looking through any black screen and it's just showing whatever is in front of there. So I'm going to go through 3 elements today of what I'm up to here. But just to show you like some background of how I arrange things and why I do the things I'm doing, I just want to show you what my typical online class looks like. So typically, if in any given week, and actually every single week, looks exactly the same. It always starts with a big idea live stream, And I do that on YouTube because I teach a class that has over 300 people in it. And that saves us from needing to get a special license with Zoom. If you go over 300, you have to, it just won't work here at K-State without special exemptions. So I use YouTube for that. And then they do readings, and those readings I'll put in quotes here because that can be not only books, but also videos and audio and stuff like that. And then we have discussion, and some of those discussions happen on Zoom. That's where we have breakout groups and get into smaller groups from the big lecture. And then we have some sort of challenge every week. And so every week it's exactly the same. The grading's the same. There's no surprises or anything like that. But the key thing to kick it all off is that big idea live stream. And, you know, typical sort of challenges. How do you engage a room of a few hundred people, especially virtually, who aren't really interested in anthropology necessarily, right? It's not their major. So it's the typical sort of gen ed challenges, magnified to some extent by this online environment. So challenges, like our students right now are kicking off their 28-day challenge, which typically looks something like this. They basically are exploring like how humans create habits by trying to break habits or to start new ones. And so some of them are trying to learn languages or learn instruments or learn to do backflips.
Rotate, land. Yes, I'm so proud of you.
Just kind of fun stuff like that. So this is what it looks like on Canvas here. You can see that basically what I just said. There's sort of the overview at the top, then a bunch of readings, and put the readings in quotes here, and then the activity or challenge down there at the bottom along with a quiz. The key here is that live stream at the beginning. What's cool about doing it this way is I can post this live stream link here, and it looks like a clickable YouTube video. If you click on it, it'll just tell you how long it is until the live stream. If you click on it during the live stream, it'll go straight to live, and students can like back up and rewind and so on. And then when I'm done with the live stream, it just continues to exist there. So this allows me to have both a synchronous and an asynchronous class for my students. They can come in synchronously and watch the live stream and chat with me while I'm doing the live stream, or they can come in later and watch it later. So this is kind of what it looks like after the live stream goes. And I like how YouTube provides like this nice little red bar here so they can track back and forth and rewind and watch it in double speed if they want to. There's all kinds of advantages we'll talk about. So what I want to talk about today are basically like three pieces of using PowerPoint at sort of an extreme level. And some of these tips, you know, I hope, well, I should say like I'm gonna try to show you some of the really easy low-hanging fruit that I found. But I should also say that I've been scrambling around in a tree that I'm not really familiar with. I'm like really at the edges of PowerPoint here, and but I found some really cool stuff that's actually really easy to do, and that's the stuff I want to pass on to you. And some of this may be new to you, some of it may be familiar. So I want to talk about design, and then I want to talk about movement. And you see some movements already. Some of those may be familiar to you, maybe some aren't so familiar. Some of them may seem overwhelming at first, but I want to tell you that they're actually much easier than you might think, including making a little smiley face that does a little smiley face like this. But of course, you might be skeptical of this, so I just want to say, even making this smiley face, it's very simple animation. I can do this in under 10 seconds, and I'm sure that you can too. And there's actually a really easy little trick inside PowerPoint that's in the new PowerPoint. It's not in any of the old ones. So make sure you've updated your PowerPoint so some of these things that I'm going to show you will actually work. So that's my promise, is most of these things you'll be able to do like in under 10 seconds. Oh, there's the skeptic's hammer saying, are you sure you can do this in under 10 seconds? Well, I promise you that I can. The only one issue here is that I do have to show you how to do this streaming thing, and that is a little bit more complicated. And we're going to have to use OBS, which is still free, so it fits in with the free and familiar, but sorry, Skeptic's Hammer, it is not necessarily easy. All right, so that's some of the animation kind of stuff that you can do. So that's movement, and then finally streaming. So the streaming stuff will be a little bit more complicated, but hopefully I can help you do it if you want to do this kind of thing. Let's just show you here what the streaming actually looks like, just so you get a sense of how this works. So basically, what streaming will allow you to do in using something like OBS, you'll be able to take a PowerPoint or any sort of visual along with your webcam, along with any browser material or videos, virtually anything, microphones, audio, anything you can imagine that can have an online or video presence can be funneled into a single source, OBS. And OBS can help you arrange it in different ways, and then you can kick it out to a virtual cam. And that virtual cam is going to basically trick your computer into thinking that everything out of OBS is a webcam. So essentially, Zoom thinks I'm on a webcam, but actually I'm running everything through OBS. And if you want like a text-based tutorial, you can go to anth101.com/OBS, and you can see what this looks like. But hopefully what I'll describe to you today will make it even easier than that tutorial. And like I said, the real advantage here is that I can then do a big idea live stream. This is actually what it typically looks like. When I kick one off for my students, I'll just have like this little banner pop up here. But what I really like about it is that aspect where it's recorded. And so it has both that synchronous and asynchronous aspect. So how do you actually do this? So I'm going to slide out of the way a little bit here. So first thing you would, well, actually, I wanted to show you the PowerPoint first. So let's do PowerPoint before we get into the OBS. And I'll show you like some of the basic design and movement principles that I'm doing here. So this next bit, I'm going to slide clear over here. And I'm going to actually exit my PowerPoint presentation. And let's see here. Oops, hang on. Sorry, I knew I would make some mistakes here. We're going to be live here in just a second. Okay, so there we are. And all right, so this is what my slideshow looks like. And the
Then I can go watch.
All right, so let me show you, this is what the slide deck looks like. Everything you just saw is actually ran not as a single slide, but you can see here there's several slides. And let me just zoom in on one particular slide here, and you'll start to get the idea of what's happening. So basically what I've done here is sorry, is that somebody in the Zoom, or is that somebody on my computer?
In the Zoom.
Okay.
Zoom. Amit is talking.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. So you can see what I've done here. Actually, the way that I would go about creating a slide like this is I would go to the last slide. Like I go to like kind of how do I want this to look in the end? And this is basically how I want it to look in the end, right? And then all I have to do is duplicate it. And then I can move anything I want here. Like let's move movement up to here. And I'm going to slide this slide up here. And now what I've got here is it's all about this morph transition. This is the new thing that's not in the new PowerPoint, or it's only in the new PowerPoint. And once you have that enabled, basically what'll happen is it'll just morph anything from one place to another. So if we go to that smiley face that I did, all I did there was there's a smiley face, and you can see you can control this little dot here, right? And all you have to do is control that between slides, put in a morph transition, and you'll get the morph there. So you can do this with just about anything. In fact, you can even do freeform shapes. So if you want to get like really complex with this, you could take a shape and you can like change it from one slide to another. This is a really simple square, obviously, but you could do this with, you can even do this with a custom shape. So you could actually make a blob that sort of like moves around in just about any way you want. And essentially what you're doing here is you're doing the basics of animation without pulling out any major animation software. And that's what I really like about PowerPoint is I've basically tried to find ways to make PowerPoint work as my graphic design editor, my animation software, and to some extent even my video creation or video editing software. So And the reason why I like to do that, of course, is because PowerPoint's almost always open anyway, and it's just much easier to use. So there you can see I've just made that little, you see that little crop in there, and that was just with the Morph tool as well. So let me go up and I'll show you another one. And this has to do with like graphic design. One of the things, you know, I like to use Canva a lot. Some of you probably use Canva. But I found that actually PowerPoint will allow me to do almost everything Canva does. And I can actually do it in some ways quicker and easier because I'm so familiar with PowerPoint. So one of the interesting things about any tool is that sometimes the tool might not be the most powerful tool, but if it's a tool you're really familiar with, then it turns out to be the most powerful tool for you. And that basically is the truth for me when it comes to PowerPoint. I'm, you know, sure there are really powerful graphic design software out there, but for me, PowerPoint is what works best because I know the tool. So I just want to show you like how I created this real quick. So this is all like fairly simple stuff, but it started with grouping. So I'll ungroup this here. And you can see a couple different elements here. One is like basically I just brought in the way I built it. I'll just show you how I built it. So I started here by just creating a block, and then I basically just created another block and laid it down, created another block. And then I've created this basic, like, nice little, here, I'll ungroup this real quick because that's, all right. So, and then, you know, obviously these are just text boxes, pretty simple stuff. And then one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and this again has to do with newer versions of PowerPoint, is that you can find just about any icon inside PowerPoint. So I know a lot of people like to scramble around the internet looking for free images, but actually it's pretty nice here. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if you just insert any icon, and let's say you want your students to have some sort of like thinking exercise, you can see there's this one here that you could insert. And then you can see it's black right now, but you can change that color to any color you want. When it comes to colors, one of the things I like to do, let me just pull up a browser real quick here. So if you go to coolers.co, not .com, but .co, you'll see all these different color schemes. And what you can do is just grab, and I'm just going to grab like a little copy and paste tool. And all you have to do is find like one of these colors that you like. And let's say I like this scheme here. So I'm just copying that scheme. Let's see here. Okay, I don't think you could see me do that, but you'll see it when I go back to PowerPoint here. So basically all I did was I clipped one of those color schemes that I liked. And now I'm coming back to PowerPoint here, and all I have to do is paste that in, and then I just like put this off of the slide. And now all I have to do is I build this thing as if, you know, I just want to stay in my color scheme here. So I just want to make sure that this is colored. I'll just do an eyedropper, and I'll pick one of the colors from my color scheme. And as long as I stay inside that color scheme, I know that this is all going to look pretty good together. So in terms of just basic design, Coolers will do some of that work for you if you're not really good with colors. I'm actually really terrible with colors, and you probably noticed my color scheme shifting throughout this presentation. But one thing that does make my presentations a lot better when I think to do it is to start at Coolers and pick a color scheme from the beginning and then go from there. So that's basically how I built that. Let's see, in terms of like this complicated little skeptic's hammer thing, that's actually just, again, I just want to demonstrate that you can do all kinds of pretty decent, I mean, this isn't amazing, but this was, again, like under 2 minutes of work. And if I ungroup this here, you'll see that basically I just built this thing of basic shapes, you know, so these are just like a bunch of squares, and just mostly squares, and then like a title, right? And then you put them all together, and then you can group them. You can also use the merge shapes tool, which will allow you to create a like a very complicated shape if you want to do something like that. So that's the basic design, and I've covered the movement. Now let's go back. Maybe I should stop for a second and check the questions here. So there's a few questions coming in on Zoom, and let's see here.
I think the main thing they're asking is what version of PowerPoint is necessary, and then how do you group was another question that just came in.
Okay. Yeah, so to group, really quickly, all you do is you just highlight everything you want to group, and then you just group it. And once it's a group, it'll move all together as a group. So that's very handy. You can still select things out and move it just by kind of double clicking in there. But it's very handy to be able to move everything as a group. And then it also responds as a group if you do animations and things like that. So that's pretty handy. In terms of, does anybody know how I could tell which version this is? I mean, I'm taking it through K-State, so I assume it's just sort of the latest version, Office 365. Does anybody? If anybody happens to know, but it should, if you get the latest one from K-State, you should be fine. All right, any other questions on the movement and stuff like that? All right, I'm gonna go into, let's learn how to actually do the streaming here now. So slideshow from current slide, here we go. All right. All right, so the first thing you will need to do is download and install OBS Studio. And on the one hand, I want to tell you, like, don't get overwhelmed. On the other hand, it's possible you will get overwhelmed. But I will say that if everything goes smoothly, it's relatively easy, and everything will flow just like I'm saying in this presentation. The problem is that sometimes, and I think it's more and more rare now, as OBS is much more robust than it used to be, but certainly sometimes you just have a problem where just OBS just isn't working for some reason. It's not communicating with your microphone, or it's not communicating with your camera or something like that. That's where it gets frustrating. Other than that, it actually can be very simple if you have somebody to show you. And that's why I wanted to show this to you guys, because I didn't really have anybody to show me, and therefore it just looked like a big mess right from the beginning. So I want to show you something that nobody ever showed me that I hope will be very useful. And that is, just I want to show you around what's happening here in OBS. So this is what it looks like when you open OBS. I just want to point out, this is your preview screen. This is what your audience is going to see. This is the second most important thing. This is where you put in your sources. So anything you want your audience to see, you can put in here. And that's things like your camera, microphone, PowerPoint, browser, your full screen, anything. And then you have a thing called scenes. And what scenes allows you to do is basically create a collection of sources arranged in a very specific way. So I'll just quickly show you right now, like I'm actually shifting through scenes when you see me do stuff like this. So this just allows me to give different perspectives very quickly, to get out of the way of things if I need to get out of the way of things. And that's all done with scenes, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then here you have the audio mixer. At very basic levels of using OBS, you don't actually have to worry about the audio mixer, because you could just use OBS to do the cool PowerPoint stuff and use Zoom, and then you wouldn't really need to worry about the audio mixer. You would just use your microphone on Zoom and use the virtual cam as your camera on Zoom. And then there's these controls over to the right. That's where you start your stream, start your recording, and do your settings. There's only like a couple things you need to know in that little box, and we'll get to those at the end here. So the first thing you want to do is you want to add a source. So that you're not going to get anything out of OBS until you add a source. So what I've done here is I just push the plus button right there, and up pops this little thing, and it shows you all the different sources you can put in. And I just want to highlight 4 things. These are the only 4 sources that you really need to get started. You'll need some sort of audio input if you're going to use OBS with audio. So that would be like your microphone. If you want to play videos through YouTube or through your browser or anything like that, you'll want to capture your audio output. That's anything that comes from your computer you can pass on to your audience. And then down here, you need your video capture device. That's going to be your webcam. And then your window capture will allow you to capture PowerPoint or your browser or anything else. So I think those are pretty straightforward. One of the issues with any like really great software is that there's often a bunch of things that you'll never use, and it's just hard to find the things that you want to use. And so I've tried to simplify it by just showing you the 4 main things that you're going to want to use here. So let's go to video capture and just start there. Basically, when you click video capture, you'll get this little window, and you get to name your video capture device. I typically just call mine something like webcam. So you can name it webcam and then hit OK, and then you'll get to select your webcam. So you'll come up here and try to find your webcam here. Once you find your webcam, there's a few little things that you can adjust down here if you want to, but of course you don't have to. And then you got the webcam up. All right, so I'm going to just jump into the questions. I saw a question pop up. So is there usually an echo to the audio like your voice today? Not usually. This has to do with, again, like the 20% of new things I'm trying. And one of the things I'm trying right now is I'm trying to stream on YouTube and on OBS at the same time, which means I have probably more audio sources than I need to have. And I probably screwed something up in the wiring, so to speak, like the virtual wiring. And I can't actually, one of the challenges of OBS is you can't necessarily hear it yourself. You have to try it and record it and then see what happened. And I didn't have a chance to do that. So I hope it's not unbearable, but that is a problem today. So use your web browser, you create a window capture. Yeah, that's right. Can you add different people on webcams from wherever they are? So you could like open up Zoom basically and then capture the Zoom window, and that would allow you to do that. There's also some YouTube tutorials on people doing it in much more fancy ways. All right. Okay. So next up, so that gets you your camera. So now you got your camera set up. We're going to go back into the plus button again. And this time we're going to do the window capture. So we're going to add PowerPoint on top of it now. So one of the tricks to adding PowerPoint is you want to go to your slideshow settings, and you're going to, so click on slideshow in PowerPoint, then set up slideshow. And then you're going to do this thing where you're going to browse by an individual window. And the reason why you're going to do that is because if you tried to run a PowerPoint slideshow and you only have one screen like I do, the moment you run your PowerPoint slideshow, you've just blasted out your whole screen. You can't see anything, and you can't see yourself. You can't see OBS. You can't see Zoom or anything, right? Just like PowerPoint takes over. So you want to browse by an individual window and then click OK. And now PowerPoint will actually browse in a window on your desktop. So this is what it looks like on your desktop. There's actually a little window where your PowerPoint is playing. And then that allows you to go back to window capture, and you can select window capture on OBS, name it PowerPoint, click OK, and just make sure that you have PowerPoint selected as your window. So that there's going to be, every window you have open is going to be an option right here. Just make sure you select PowerPoint there, and then your PowerPoint will show up, and you can see it's not in the right place. It's like right on top of my face. So we need to resize this thing, and then we also want to make it into an overlay and make the black transparent. You could also do this if you want to set up all your slides in like fluorescent green background, then you can make the green transparent. I like to do it black because that allows me to kind of do what I'm doing here, which is right now, like I can go like this and slide clear out of the way of a slide. I can go like this and get behind the slide. And obviously that doesn't work really well here, but I can just slide off to the side here, or slide further, or slide all the way out. And if it were green, it would just look really glaring and kind of disturbing, like right here with all the green. So I like to keep it black and just use the black transparent. So let's start with resize. Essentially, it's very simple. You just grab those little handles and you can resize it. And then one very important trick, if you hit Alt while you're resizing, it'll go to crop mode, and that'll allow you to do some nifty things like you see, like when I'm doing this. This is a lot of crop as well as movement, right? So that cropping can be very important. So the next thing then, after you get it resized, is to make it into an overlay. So for that, you're going to right click on PowerPoint. So let's zoom in a bit here. So you're right clicking on the PowerPoint in your sources. you'll see a thing called filters show up. And then in filters, you'll see a plus button. You hit that plus button, and you'll get an option to do this thing called color key. So click on color key, and then once you're in color key, you've got typically, like, it would be keyed out as green, so that's why green is selected at first. Just hit this drop down box and hit black. Select the black color, and then I like to drop similarity all the way down to 1 and smoothness all the way down to 1. And what that'll do is it means that the only thing that's transparent is pure black. And as long as I have my slides set to pure black as the background, everything will show through that background. But if I show a picture that it has just a slight shade of black that's not pure black, it'll still show up as a regular picture, and it won't look kind of funky. So now you have a situation that looks like this. It looks kind of strange, but you're having success now because you're actually seeing through the black to the webcam underneath. And if you have a clean slide that looks something like this, so here, this would be your PowerPoint with the slide here. Obviously, it's going to look like this, and you're good to go. So that's how that works. The other piece here is the scenes, like I mentioned, and here's a real simple one to start with, is like center, left, and corner. Basically, all you would do is set up your, I would make sure you have everything set up exactly like you want to in your sources. So you have your PowerPoint, your webcam, and then just duplicate. So you right click and duplicate, and then just move the camera. And you can move it left and then into the corner. And so if you come up with a situation like this, where, you know, my slide is covering my face, I can slide out to the left here, or I can go all the way up into the corner if I want as well. So that's basically how I have mine set up. The last step to this to get it to zoom is to download and install an OBS virtual cam. And it's pretty straightforward. You just hit this download button here. It'll download. It's more or less an automatic installation. Just look at the how to use section here on how to install it. But it's very straightforward. And then all you have to do is make sure your virtual cam is set to on. And then when you go to Zoom, you'll see that you'll have an option called OBS camera. And you hit that OBS camera, and there it is. All right. So, all right. Do we have permission to record? Will it be available on YouTube? Oh, that was private. Sorry. Yeah, you can record it. It's also going to be on YouTube, so you can watch it later on YouTube. Yes, I've heard this problem about Mac not having a button for that, but it looks like somebody figured it out. So hopefully that's working out. All right. So there you can see the OBS camera showing up, and you're good to go. The last thing that I wanted to talk about are these controls over here. And I'm really just going to show you one key control that you need if you're going to go on YouTube. And you might ask, like, well, why would I go on YouTube? And I just want to give you a quick rundown of why you might want to go on YouTube. So first off, you have this clean, no lag stream. So I don't know how laggy it is today. It's probably not too bad on Zoom. But sometimes if you're trying to play video, and especially if you're trying to play something like really high quality, it can just look a little jagged. You can have free and unlimited participants. So one of the issues for me, like I said, is I teach a class of over 300, so that makes it difficult to get on Zoom sometimes. You have chat versus faces. So this is good and bad. On the one hand, there's no way you're going to have anybody pop in on YouTube and have their audio on accident. On the downside, of course, you can't have face-to-face conversations. So it's really good for lecture. You don't end up with this situation where a student is visibly smoking a joint in your large lecture class. But you do miss out on that sort of no lag face-to-face thing. One of the strange things about being on YouTube is that there's about a 20-second delay before it goes to YouTube. That's what makes it so smooth, is that there's this lag where it's buffering, and it makes it very beautiful and smooth when it's up on YouTube. But the problem is you can see a chat thing pop up, for example, and you won't be able to even, like, they won't really hear your answer for 20 seconds later because you're, in a sense, 20 seconds in the future from where they are. Next one, what I really like is that viewers can pause, back up, replay, and adjust speed. I think this is really important for students. Sometimes it just makes sense to be able to watch things in double speed, to skip through things that you maybe don't need to hear again or don't need to review, whereas sometimes you need to replay something. So that's obviously very useful. And there's an automatic recording with the same link. So Zoom does a lot of this, and we've integrated it into Canvas quite nicely. But I think there is some elements of smoothness that YouTube is beating Zoom on with this. So like I said, this is how I end up using it, and I think it works really nicely, and I think it's good for students to be able to have that live stream both sort of synchronously and asynchronously. So the way you set up a live stream on YouTube, if you'd like to do this, is up at the top of a YouTube screen, you'll see these icons. Just hit the plus button here, and that'll drop down this thing where you can upload a video or go live. You want to go live here. And don't worry, you're not going to go live right away. Instead, you're going to get into this thing, and you'll see this thing called stream settings. And what you need to do is you need to grab this stream key that is your unique stream key, and you don't want to share that with anybody. That's why it's blacked out here. If anybody has this, they can stream to your channel and do whatever they want, right? It'll be like epic Zoom bombing because not only will they be Zoom bombing, but they are going to be essentially impersonating you. So make sure you don't show that to anybody or share that with anybody. You're going to copy that stream key, and then all you need to do is go into settings on OBS, go to stream settings, click on YouTube, and then enter that stream key right there, and then you are live on YouTube. So that's pretty much it. I got some other examples I can show, but I wanted to make sure we had time for questions as well. And I can also show you some other free tools that I use and see what other questions people have here. So are you able to get MP3 and MP4 versions of these recordings? Yeah, so it's recorded on YouTube, and then you can download it on YouTube. Like if you go into your studio on YouTube, there'll be a download link there. If you can't get it that way, you can use 4K downloader to grab it as well. Yeah, so this is recorded. I'll share the live stream link here from YouTube, and you can grab it. You can go watch it on YouTube as well. You can watch it in double speed or half speed or anything you want.
And I'll also remind you that this is also going to be available on our Canvas page afterwards. So we will download this recording from this Zoom session, so you'll be able to watch it and pause and rewind and all the things that I'm going to need to do to implement these when I'm playing.
Using Zoom, can you share screen a YouTube video while playing? I'm not sure. I mean, certainly I can share YouTube videos anytime on this system that I have set up. And they'll play very smoothly through the YouTube stream. Yeah, and you can, when you share YouTube videos on Zoom, there's a thing when you hit the share screen button, it'll say like optimize for video. Make sure you click optimize for video, and that will make it a little bit clearer. For small interactive, says, is that better using Zoom or OBS? So actually, I think the question is really like, should you use Zoom or YouTube? For a small interactive, you should definitely use Zoom for, because that allows you to converse like face-to-face, essentially with no lag. I use YouTube basically for lecturing. So anytime when it's really about like a smooth presentation that I want to be pretty and dynamic and rewatchable and watchable in double speed and all those types of things, I'll do it on YouTube. OBS can work with YouTube or Zoom, so I pretty much use OBS every time I get on a call for Zoom or on YouTube. Yeah, there's some questions about audio. Like if you are going to use OBS and show videos, yes, you will need to make sure you get that audio output capture into one of your sources, and that will capture the any sound that's coming from your computer. So I'll just, as people are bringing in questions, you're welcome to slide off whenever you want if you have more questions. And I'll just show you a few other examples. These are the 3 classes that I teach, and you can see the sort of common structure there between them. I mean, yeah, that's a good point by Teresa. That's another reason why I like using YouTube, is because of the buffering. There is no problem with access for students. They can, sometimes they'll have to wait a few minutes, and they might essentially be a few minutes behind on the lecture, but at least they're getting the lecture in a clean stream. Whereas on Zoom, some of the students will just not get a very good experience at all. So that's one of the things I really like. All right, so for those overwhelmed, how did you start? So I started in a panic like everybody else probably, trying to figure out how I was going to teach, a few hundred students. And I guess when I heard that Zoom couldn't even handle 300 plus students, I started to get worried. But I really wanted to create something dynamic. So the way I got started was essentially I watched a lot of YouTube videos about how to do it. I started watching YouTubers and streamers that I thought were doing really interesting things. So that kind of took me down a rabbit hole. But the easiest thing to do is really just download OBS and hit that plus button on sources, get your webcam on there, and hit the plus sign again, get your PowerPoint on there, and see if you can get that transparent background. And those little wins like that will get you going. And once the cool thing is like everything you discover that OBS can do, and you sort of figure out like, oh, I know how to do that now, it unlocks like 10 more things. And if you learn how to do 2 things, it's not that you just learned how to do 2 things, it's like you learned how to do 100 things, because each thing is like 10 things times 10, right? Because suddenly you realize that like, oh, this little thing that I do here also works with all these other things I just learned over here. And pretty soon that's how you end up like being able to like create these nifty little sliding around the screen kind of stuff. That just comes from those are really simple things to learn, and then you start to realize like, oh, if I piece that together with this, then really cool things start happening. And when you then piece it together with the YouTube and the movement on YouTube, then you can do all sorts of cool things. So this is actually an example here where if I want to review the weekly overview with my students, essentially this is kind of a quiz question for you to see if you can reverse engineer what I've done here. But this is like essentially a summary of how I do my class here. But I'm just going to go back up here. But this is all done with Morph Transitions. And essentially all I've done is I've created a black box here that's pure black. So anything there is going to be see-through. I created a pure black thing here underneath it. And then all that's showing is this. And then when I hit the next button, it's just changed slides, and all I've done is slid this thing up a little bit. And again, it's actually very simple on the one end, but then it actually looks like really slick in its presentation. So it's like really simple, and yet looks like it would be difficult to do. Here's another one where I've taken the 15 weeks of a class, and I've just created a list. And again, using the morph transition, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to stretch out the list. So there I'm stretching it out. And now I've put a black box here, and I put a black box up here. And I can go through the week, or go through the weeks here with my students, week by week, and just show them like, oh, these are the things that we're going to talk about in these weeks here. And I can just scoot around and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of this is pretty straightforward. On YouTube, copyright, the moment you put something on YouTube, it's your material, unless it wasn't your material. And so that is one important thing to do, is that the rules of streaming on YouTube are tighter than the rules inside a classroom. So the problem with that then is that some of the things that I might have shown in the classroom, I can't show on YouTube, or YouTube will actually automatically block the stream. This is one of like the very sophisticated things about YouTube, is that you know, even if you think you're doing something with fair use, it's all about what the robots of YouTube think. And the robots of YouTube will just simply like use their content ID system, and if you're using something copyrighted, they'll shut your stream down. They'll usually give you like 60 seconds warning before they shut it down. Yeah, so that 15-point thing, it's actually only 5 slides, because I skipped from like 3 to 15, so it's only 4 slides. So it's a little laggy right now. My PowerPoint's laggy right now. There you go. Oh, you can't see it. I turned it off. There it is. So yeah, this is slide 1, slide 2. And it's just a morph transition between each one of these. So these are just some different things that you can do. Like here's another one. So you could do, like, let's say you had a list like this. Let's just pop out for a second. And so this is a really simple one that I can show you live here. So I've got this slide here, and I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to go in here, and you can see like on this slide, I've got it set up here. It's on freedom. And then I go to the second slide, and all I have to do is drop this down, make sure that I've got my transition set to morph. And you can set the time to whatever you want, do 0.75 seconds. And now it'll just go down. And you can duplicate it again and just slide it down again, and then duplicate again, slide it down again, and then just do it one more time. Okay, and then you got this pretty slick little so it's not perfect, obviously, because I just did it really quick, but yeah. So can you play a song or video on YouTube while streaming a presentation through OBS on YouTube without copyright trouble? It just depends on the video. If it's been content ID'd, probably not. So again, that's one of the differences between what you can do on in the classroom versus what you can do on YouTube. So probably not. Although I've done it, and it's very rare that you'll get completely blocked. You'll get completely blocked if you try to show something that's paid for content or something like that. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll send me a note saying you violated copyright, and your stream is not shut down, but you can't monetize it. So not that you would monetize a class, you know, when you're teaching a class. So that shouldn't be a problem. So again, some of these things, you know, can get kind of cool, like, you know, I'll just show you, like, this is a title slide that I use sometimes. And again, just using a simple morph transition, you can do something cool like that. And that was actually very simple. Again, it's all the simple, just based on the morph transition. And then, that's also just the morph transition. And again, you can probably imagine how that works. And, just take a moment to think about like, okay, wait, how did that work, right? So the super simple videos is going to slide down. This is going to slide out. This is going to slide out. This is going to slide out or fade out. And then this new thing comes up here. So so here you can see what that slide looks like, and then the second slide. And if you create the morph between them, that super simple videos is just going to drop down to here. So that's basically how that worked. How did I take that picture? That's with a 360-degree camera on a 10-foot pole. So a 360 camera will take a picture of everything. So I just laid down on the ground and held the camera. You can actually see it there in my left hand, just barely. So I'm holding a 10-foot pole, and the camera's on the end of that 10-foot pole, and then a 360 camera will automatically eliminate the pole. So the pole is sort of photoshopped out, so to speak, but it's all automatic. So have I found that students are more engaged or respond better to this type of video? So, in general, like my students are just, all I get is like really positive feedback about the big idea lectures, and it just seems like they're going really well. Like people find them really engaging. I've heard some students say it's better than being in class. I can see, I think I could see why, they do seem like very dynamic. There's a lot going on in them. And then there's like that, there's also the reality that, some students can watch them in 1.5 speed or 2x speed. So I think it like fits their pace better. I think some people just want to watch it faster. Some of them want to watch it slower. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. I also, I think one of the other pieces of this is, what about us as faculty? Is this better or worse? And for me, this is like this is the best part of doing something like this is, I worried so much about losing the energy of being in a classroom. And I found that like live streaming and piecing these things together, there's like creativity to it. There's a joy in creating that goes along with it. And then there's like an excitement of sharing it, and you get the comment stream going like while you're talking, which, it's actually less lonely than lecturing. Because if you lecture in front of 400 people, during the lecture, at least, you're not getting feedback. But when you live stream in front of 400 people, you at least get a little comment stream, and it's kind of neat to get that little comment stream. And you can encourage your students to put in little emojis and things like that if you want them to. There are a lot of different ways you can communicate online. But I also want to say that the overall process of my day is quite good, actually. Like I expected this semester to be very lonely and kind of sad, and I just don't feel that way, actually. I feel like there's been a lot of joy in creating and doing these things. So how long is a typical class lecture, and how long does it take you to prepare each one with this method? So a typical lecture has been about 50 minutes, 50 minutes. But that is a bit of a misnomer. It's more like, it's kind of similar to today, in which there's really 30 minutes of prepared content. And I would actually angle sometimes more toward 20 minutes of prepared content, like really tight and powerful, make it like really useful, but then pause now and then and catch up with comments and be a little bit more just chatty kind of thing. So typically I try to front load things, and I'll run through something in say 30 minutes or so, and then I'll introduce the challenge for the week. And typically after I introduce the challenge, there's a lot of questions about how to do the challenge, and tips and techniques to do the challenge and stuff like that. So I think in an ideal world, I would keep these to like 20 to 30 minutes of like high impact, really, really good material, and then like have a little bit of an open space on the other side of that. But it doesn't always work out, as you guys know. Like sometimes we talk too long and get hung up on something and just kind of drag on. So, but they've all been 50 minutes so far this year. Oh, how long does it take to prepare one? Well, so I'm not starting at 0, so that's an important thing. Is like one of the neat things actually is I'm only doing one a week, and I used to lecture 2 or 3 times a week. So typically I can take those 2 or 3 lectures that I've already prepared, and I just look for like the very best stuff. I look for the essence, and I'm looking for the best material, the high impact material, and I just start building something that's going to be about 30 minutes long. That takes anywhere from 2 hours to, I would say, 2 to 5 hours on the sort of like that's the top of the bell curve. But I've also spent in some cases like just because I love doing it, right? If I'm doing a presentation that I really love and I have this little trick that I'm trying to pull off, I mean, how long do you think it took me to do that little hammer thing? Like the little hammer joke. So the hammer joke took me like 30 minutes, like for 5 seconds of material. Like sometimes that happens, and that ratio doesn't hold up very well if you try to pull that off for a whole lecture. So. One thing I just mentioned while we're here talking about time, though, is that I think it's really important for all of our sanity to create like a really strict schedule for yourself, where you cap the time that you do on certain things. Otherwise, you can spend so much time on one thing that you like totally drop the ball on somewhere else, and you start to feel behind. So I have a pretty strict blocked out schedule, and I give myself one day to prepare, like an 8-hour day to prepare all of my PowerPoint materials. There's like a day set aside for it. And oftentimes I'll only need half that day, and then I can take the rest to like go for a run or whatever. Because I have it all blocked off, I don't have to start panicking about the next thing I haven't done. I did the thing that I thought was going to take me 8 hours. It took me 6 hours. Now I have 2 free hours, and I can read a book I've been wanting to read, or typically I just go for a run and read a book through an Audible, through an audiobook kind of thing. So modifying challenges. So basically we just make sure every one of them requires no interaction with people outside of a small circle. So we used to have a challenge called Talking to Strangers, where you'd have to actually approach a stranger and get to know them and essentially do like a miniature ethnography kind of thing. Obviously very challenging to do and would be like dangerous to do right now, and not very polite thing to do right now. So we changed that one to be, we called it the Humanizing Portrait Challenge. And it could be, you just had to take a portrait of somebody close to you who's already inside your COVID circle, basically. Like you can't go outside the circle you're already interacting with, and just, have a deep conversation with them, try to find some clever way of telling a powerful story that humanizes them, take a picture that humanizes them, and then share that. So that's how we did that one. That was probably one of the more difficult ones to adjust, but in general, like we haven't had too much trouble thinking of adjustments.
So at this point, we're just about out of time, but I want to remind everybody that this has been recorded, and you can go back and look at your leisure while you're working through all of the wonderful tools that Mike has brought to our attention. And Mike, I'm sure, is going to be available to respond over email on any questions that you continue to have, because Mike is wonderful at supporting all of our educational efforts here at K-State, and I'm so glad that he took some time to share his ideas with us today. So please join me in thanking Mike, either clapping out loud or virtually. And I will remind you that we have a post-event survey coming out on this for those of you who are pursuing our professional development certificate or fellow status at the TLC. And we are really excited to have you today again. Thank you so much, Mike. Happy teaching this semester.
All right. Thanks a lot.